if you look at the way that family structures work in Zambia, what do the elders say? So people are kind of, let's say, programmed, if you forgive the expression, right, hardwired to expect to be told, that the boss is the elder, right, the professional elder. You don't get this upwards and downwards flow of ideas within the office or within the professional environment. You get bosses telling people what to do, and then people trying to make the most of doing it or do nothing because that's better than doing it wrong. One of the things that I think would really help Zambia as a whole to move forward is to sort of break down some of these hierarchies and some of these rigidities of thinking and to start really, exchanging ideas and trying out new things and learning from one another, whether it's up or down within the office structure. And the vast majority of people that I've met here have been very decent, very kind, very welcoming, right? So if I say something negative, right, don't take it as a kind of like, oh, all Zambians are like that. That's not what I mean at all, right? There are stereotypes that European people have got. Money, they're all rich. My wife is Zambian. If I go to buy something, I'll get one price. If she goes to buy something, she'll get a different price, right? And she'll say even, James, just stay in the car. Just, you are the colonizer, right? And you still hear that kind of language, right? And we're like 60 years on. People can say things like that. Not often, but sometimes you'll hear it, when some discussion goes in that kind of political direction or whatever, right?
Hello, welcome to Money and People podcast, the show that connects the dots between financial success and the power of human capital. Today, we talk all things cross-cultural dynamics, and to help us navigate that journey, we have James Blewett. James, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much indeed.
Okay, just to get everything started and for the sake of our audience, who is James, and tell us about your journey, your life journey.
Okay, so here's the edited version, right? I'll keep it nice and easy. So I grew up in the UK, and but when I left school, I started traveling. I joined the Navy, and I was sort of posted around the place and got to see some really interesting places. And then after that, I went to university. Then I trained as an accountant in London, but realized that auditing was not what I wanted to spend my life doing. And so I had the opportunity to go and work in Eastern Europe on privatization deals in the 90s. And then that led into more like economic development work in Asia and then in Africa as well. And about 8 years ago, just over 8 years ago, I came to Zambia, and I've lived and worked here since then.
Okay. So you traveled the world. What made you say, this is home?
I think it was a lot of things came together, right? Number one, it's a really nice place to live, to be honest, right? I mean, Zambia is very easy and pleasant, and good
You
place
hear
to
that,
live.
Zambians? We are nice people.
And secondly, I think it was just a stage of my life where it was time to sort of do more of what I wanted to do rather than pursuing sort of career steps. And then I met my current wife. So all sorts of things came together to make me end up living here.
Well, lovely story. And what were your first impressions of Zambia when you arrived?
Very well, mixed in a way, because it felt very familiar, right? The language. I worked in a lot of countries where languages were an issue. Obviously, English is well known and spoken pretty much everywhere in Zambia, and it's the language of business and government and what have you. So that was very easy to adapt to. But at the same time, you start to see little nuances, differences that become apparent as you get to know a place better.
Okay.
So a bit of a mixture.
So what differences did you notice? What stood out immediately?
what stood out immediately was I guess it felt a little bit like you were stepping into a very formal environment
Mm-hmm.
in some ways, right? So professionally, I mean, personally, and in my kind of like social life and what have you, it was all very easy, very laid back, very easygoing, and what have you. But professionally, I was running a program for the UK government here,
Mm-hmm.
PEP Zambia, which
Yeah.
was a private enterprise program for Zambia, and it involved a lot of contact with people in government, with
Mm-hmm.
people in different like embassies and what have you, and aid agencies and NGOs, and obviously with business people as well. And I found that side of things, the professional side of things, very structured,
Mm-hmm.
very formal, very rigid, and it was kind of like, again, it was a bit of a contradiction because in private life, everybody's so laid back and
Yes.
easygoing. But the moment you put on your suit and tie,
Everything changes.
everything changes, right?
Everything
And you have
changes.
to adopt this whole new persona.
Okay. No, that's interesting. I never thought about it that way, but I think it's become evident here. So usually when we knock off, it's time to relax, very relaxed, language changes, but in the office, it's sir, madam, that kind of thing.
Right. And
Yeah.
it's the kind of language that you don't hear. Like if you were to use that language in the UK,
Hmm.
people would be like, hang on a sec,
What's going
why
on
are you
here?
talking like that? Yeah.
Yeah. And what was the most surprising or challenging culture shock you experienced, and how did you adapt to it?
Um, I think not necessarily but challenging is um the sort of, I'm used to working in a very open, very transparent way,
Hmm.
very direct talking.
Yes.
You know, if there's an issue, let's talk. Let's identify it. Let's talk about it. Let's get it dealt with and moved on. If there's a job that needs doing, let's set a deadline. Let's get it done. Let's what I found a bit challenging here was um, people are very polite, right? Very charming, very nice, but it kind of, which is fine as as a way of being, but it does make it slightly difficult sometimes to pin down issues and deal with
Mm-hmm.
them because there's a lot of talking around things.
Mm-hmm.
Or, people are, let's say you've agreed with somebody that, oh, please do this by Friday.
Yes.
They'll walk away, not, have you understood? Yeah, I understood. I know exactly what I'm doing. Okay, fine. And then Friday comes and there's like nothing there. And then what you discover afterwards, it's not because the person is lazy or anything like that, right? It's probably because they didn't understand exactly what it was that they were required
Mm.
to do. And, but somehow they didn't want to ask that question. They'd rather pretend that they understood and then try and deal with it
That's right.
afterwards, I guess. So that was a bit challenging. And just, I, even to this day, I constantly have to check in that what I've asked for or what I'm saying has been understood.
But how do you then manage that? Because yes, somebody will say, yes, I understand, and they walk away, and you're like, yeah, we know he hasn't. So do you then give more explanation? How do you navigate that? Because it might never end. So
Right.
how do you go around it?
Yeah. So I think one of the habits I've adopted, and it honestly, it is not micromanaging, but just checking in on,
Mm-hmm.
so you don't just say, oh, see you on Friday and expect to see somebody on Friday, right? You go along on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. How's it going? Is
Mm-hmm.
everything okay? Did you manage to? And I think that has really helped. Also, giving, I've learned the power of giving an example of
Mm-hmm.
what it is, right?
Yeah.
Let's say you're asking somebody to do a market study or something like that, right? Okay. Give some who hasn't, because I'm a great believer in pushing people, giving them new things to do, right? Um, but it's really important to almost give a sort of template and give quite a lot of
Mm-hmm.
guidance as to what does the finished product look like, just to build somebody's confidence. And again, it's not because you don't trust them to do it; it's to give them the
The
confidence to be able to
confidence, yeah.
start putting words on paper and feel that they're going in the right direction.
And did this create so basically the different context? Think you direct, needing to get things done. and these are the locals more being high context, wanting more explanations. How did it create any frictions or misunderstanding?
Yes.
It did.
Yeah. Um, and a lot of frustration, right? As I was getting to be honest, right? As I was getting to understand how things work and how people behave and what have you. Yeah, I would sometimes go, oh my goodness me, why don't they understand? Why don't they get it?
How
You know
hard
what?
can this be?
Yeah, exactly, right? And of course, as a manager, what you should be thinking is, what is it that I have failed to explain? What is it that I should have done differently, right? But yeah, I think frustrated. There was a lot of frustration, but as I say, as time has gone on, found ways to work around these
Yeah.
things. It gets much easier.
Okay. Okay, great. And workplace culture, how does it differ from what you're used to? Or what is in Europe? And are there any adjustments you've had to make, basically your leadership style, your hierarchy, how you
Mm.
perceive teamwork?
Now, one thing I would say to you, right, is the idea that there is a European culture,
Mm,
I don't think is any more true than to say there's an African culture, right? So I've worked in many countries in Europe. I
mm.
mean, obviously the UK is home, but I spent a lot of time working in Eastern Europe and what have you, and also in Belgium and France and other countries. Um, and there are the way that you behave in a German office is different to how you behave
Mhm.
in the UK. But to come to your question, right? So um, the workplace culture here, I think, very formal, very hierarchical, very um uh, okay, I'm going to say it, unadventurous, right?
Unadventurous.
Yes,
Mm,
right? Are people would rather avoid risk than take a risk, right? People, this is my experience, right?
yeah.
That people will somehow, if I do nothing, or if I do just follow this
Stick to the
formula.
script, tick the
Yes,
boxes.
exactly. That is better than, you know what, I'm not sure why I'm doing this, or actually the way that I'm being asked to do this isn't the best way to do it. And it'd be much better if I went to James and said, you know what you asked me to do, I've been thinking about it, and it'd be a whole lot better if we did X, Y, Z instead of A,
Yeah.
B, C, right? And so in the end, what you end up with is you don't get this upwards and downwards flow of ideas
Mm,
within the office or within the professional
yeah.
environment. You get bosses telling people what to do, and then people trying to make the most of doing it, or do nothing because that's better than doing it wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the things that I think would really help Zambia as a whole to move forward is to sort of break down some of these hierarchies and some of these rigidities of thinking, and to start really exchanging ideas and trying out new things and
But
learning from one another, whether it's up or down within the office structure. And yeah.
well, in your assessment, what do you think causes that straight and narrow mindset? I mean, the education is there, the guys are smart, they're pushers, but why, from your view, why do you think we like the safe route?
Okay, so I would challenge one of the things that you've just said
Mm,
when you said the education is there.
mm,
And what I would say is it's not about qualifications.
mm,
It's about the quality of education,
mm.
right? Now, I signed up to do a part-time MA at UNZA in history. And the difference of the teaching style and the way what is expected of a student here compared to when I did my university back in the UK and that was, when was that? Back in the 80s, right? So this is 40 years
Yeah,
ago,
yeah, a long time
right?
ago.
It was much more free flowing, much more discussive 40 years ago in the UK than it is here, right?
Mm,
Here, you have a lecturer sits there, reads out their lecture, and you're in sort of in a small group, and at the end they say, has anybody got any questions? And they go around, this was all online, right?
mm,
So
mm.
no, no. No, these are my classmates. I'm like, hang on a sec, how can you sit through a 1-hour lecture
Lecture and not have questions.
on a subject that you're doing a master's degree in, and you haven't got a question at the end of it? Everything's clear.
Are you even in class?
Do you know what I mean? And I think that to come back to your question about the, I mean, certainly it's not because people are lacking in intellectual capability or anything like that, right? But the university does not prepare you to question. And university, I think, is a very important part of growing up, right? And your early professional formation and whatever. And even if you don't go to university, right, your first job, of course, when you're a youngster, right, you do what you're told and you keep your nose clean and you get on and do it. If you make a cup of tea for your boss if you're sensible. But at the same time, you should be observing, watching, questioning, learning from what's going on around you, rather than just trying to sort of keep to the straight and narrow and keep out of trouble. And I would say that it comes back to this whole thing about critical thinking, right? Is what I am being taught, whether you're a medical student or a history student or whatever, it doesn't, does that really make sense to me as a thoughtful, intelligent human being, right? Does this make sense to me? And then I think one of the other things that you were asking about, why these rigidities and what have you, right? There's a lack of collaboration, right? There's a lack of sense of, whether it's horizontally or vertically, let's say, within an organization, right? Everybody's looking for instruction rather than engaging in a team approach towards completing something.
Yeah, I think I've noticed that collaboration seems to be, I guess we're learning how to do it. We're getting better, but there's still quite some time. I don't know if it's a trust issue or more of I need to be seen doing this on my own and I'll succeed faster and I'll be the go-to person. But then you only succeed through synergy, right?
Yes, exactly. And I think there is a trust issue, right? Is it safe to say this in this environment? Or, if I'm getting something wrong, is everybody going to criticize me or whatever? But I think also, if you look at the way that family structures work in Zambia, right? What do the elders say? What's their opinion, right, about something, right? And so people are kind of, let's say, programmed, if you forgive the expression, right, hardwired to expect to be told, that the boss is the elder, right, the professional elder. So it goes across a number of things.
Yeah, and really answers my next question, which was, how do Zambians approach trust and relationship building compared to other places you have been?
Right. And I think, coming to my history bit, if you look at Zambia's history and what has happened post-independence, and with the moving into the era of the one-party state and what have you, and again, it was this very sort of, it wasn't really about trust building, right? It wasn't about a competition of ideas. It wasn't about, we can work together to solve this. It was very much a kind of like, this is the formula for life. Follow this formula and you'll be okay.
You'll be okay, yeah.
But if you step outside of that and you're not quite sure who's going to haul you up, right? Can I trust this guy?
Yeah.
Can I not trust this guy?
Okay. And did you encounter any stereotypes about Europeans in Zambia, or vice versa? And how did you address those?
Yes. So I mean, look, the vast majority of people that I've met here have been very decent, very kind, very welcoming, right? So if I say something negative, right, don't take it as a kind of like, oh, all Zambians are like that. That's not what I mean at all, right? But I think there is a tendency when you see a sort of, okay, so my wife is Zambian.
Yep.
If I go to buy something, I'll get one price. If she goes to buy something, she'll get a different price, right? And she'll say even, James, just stay in the car. Just,
It's cheaper. It's cheaper for
Because
you
to be cheaper
to be cheaper
if I
for.
go and buy the tomatoes. Although I can now say Shinga tomatoes, so I can sort of, you know, give a little signal that I'm kind of, you know, been around a bit. But no, there are stereotypes that European people have got money, they're all rich, they're all come,
Mm,
you know, and I think also there's the narrative around Zambian nation building and what have you is is not always helpful in terms of building understanding and relationships and what have you. So, you know, you are the colonizer, right? And you
mm.
still hear that kind of language, right? And we're like
You
60
do?
years on, right?
Oh wow.
And you know, and people can say things like that, not often, but sometimes you'll hear it, you know, when some discussion goes in that kind of political direction or
Mm,
whatever,
mm,
right?
mm,
Then you'll hear that kind of thing. But no, I think mostly it's about very, let's say, naive assumptions
mm.
about, you know, who you are and what, you know, your material wealth or whatever, right? And it's like, come on, guys, you know,
We've moved on. It's been 60 years.
you'd have hoped so, right?
Yeah, no, that's a bit retrogressive. Okay, okay. And what aspects of Zambian culture have positively surprised you?
Um, I think the the again, I'm not sure that surprised is the right word. Things that have struck me,
Mm,
right, is one of the things that's really struck me is the kind of generosity
mm,
of welcome, right? Um, and we talked, of course, there are, you know, you can't generalize and say, but it's something that the kind of people that I like
mm,
to hang out with, right, are those sort of people. And, you know, having married into a Zambian family, to, you know, the way that that has all worked and has been so easy, been made very easy for me.
yeah.
And when my family has come to visit from the UK or whatever, they have been equally welcomed and looked after. And
Mm,
it's almost like, gosh, guys, please, you know, you're so kind,
mm,
you're so decent and good people. Um, so that has really struck me, and that's been a very nice experience.
oh, that's fantastic. And how has living in Zambia changed your perspective on culture, identity, and global interconnectedness?
Wow. Um, it's been, I guess, it's been another piece in a very big jigsaw.
Mm,
So before I've worked in countries where, um, you know, so in Eastern Europe, it was in the aftermath of communism
yeah.
and it was the end of all of that. Then when I was in Asia, I was in India and Bangladesh, and I worked in Afghanistan, which is obviously a Muslim country. So it has a different, you know, very different sort of culture and history and what have you. And then coming here, yeah, it was, as I say, another piece in a jigsaw.
Mm,
And I think that it's changed it's made my worldview richer without a
mm,
shadow of doubt, right? Before living in Zambia, I've never had a chance to really live in an African country and
yeah.
become part of
Mm,
the the society and what have you, and to experience it to the depth that I have here. And that's been a fantastic experience.
okay. And for somebody moving to Europe or coming to Zambia, what advice would you have for them?
Um, Coming to Zambia, I would say embrace it, enjoy it. You know, don't just you know, don't be scared to go out there, right?
Mm,
And yeah, there are some people I've met who have been here for quite some time, and they've barely travelled outside Lusaka, or
mhm.
they've gone to, you know, the kind of well-known tourist
Livingston
destinations, right?
and
Exactly.
yeah.
Um, Without ever, and actually, here's the thing. We're talking about that kind of thing. One of the sad things as a tourist here, and the way that the tourism sector is set up, is how isolated you are.
Mm.
Right. So if you go to South Luangwa or something like that, you arrive at your lodge and you stay in your lodge, and there's no going out, right? There's no sort of going out into the town or
Yeah,
whatever and
yeah.
sort of see, and which I would say is, the most natural thing to want to do, right? To want to actually see what life
You
is
want,
like,
yeah, you
right?
want to see what else is there,
Yeah,
meet people, understand, interact with the
yeah.
locals and all.
But my advice would be embrace it, get out there, do the traveling. Don't be scared to sort of get lost now and again. Or you don't always need signs to get you everywhere, right?
Yeah,
Be willing to take a few risks in your
curious.
travel. Um, and then for Zambians going to the UK, I would say go with an open mind
Mm.
and just be ready and willing to learn from that experience in the same way as coming here I've learned so much. It's yeah.
So what has been your go-to destination here for a holiday?
um I would say the place that so I've traveled all over the country now. I've been
Yeah,
to every province, and that's something that I'm
you really beaten me to it. I think I've done 7 out of 10.
okay. That's not bad. Keep
Yeah.
going.
No, I'll cover the country.
But no, I mean, I like Livingston very much, right? I
Uh,
find it a very interesting place to be. Obviously, you've got Musiatunya and what have you, and it's like, wow, this is an incredible sight. You can never get bored of seeing that. Um, but but going down to the lower Zambezi, we've been out to Mongu quite a few times, and
mm,
yeah, but when you go to Mongu, right, what do? Right? You can spend a few days there and visit the palace and all this kind of thing, right? But we ended up with the guy who was a fisherman canoe paddling around, right? It was when the river was high. And in the end he invites us back to his village. And so we're then sort of sitting and chatting and playing with the kids and all this kind of thing, right? And
yeah,
it was that to me is experiencing
nice.
Zambia, right?
Yeah.
Getting scratching the surface and really getting to
No,
know things a bit better.
yeah, that's fantastic. No, I'm really happy that you've actually explored Zambia 10. I've done 7 out of 10. I feel like a bad citizen already. But when I go to the UK, I'll visit all the towns. I'll go and okay, fine. I'll be in London. I'm a Chelsea fan. I'm not going to watch Millwall.
You need to get to the Den, right? If you want to experience British culture at its best, go to a Millwall match. Go to the Den. It's raw, it's visceral, it's brilliant. You'd love it.
I'll take you up on that. And how have you and where are you staying now?
So we live about 50 kilometers outside Lusaka
Okay.
in a village called Shamatinta, which
Mm-hmm.
is by Katoba at the end of Leopards Hill Road.
Yes.
And that's exposed me to a whole new thing, right? Because we're very much part of the village community and get to know people and what have you. And I remember we've lived there now for 2 and a bit years, or
Yeah.
yeah, and about a year in, no, it must have been less than a year. There was a village funeral, and so you go to the funeral house, you pay your respects and
Yes.
all the rest of it, and then we went to the burial. And at the end of it, the village headman said, by the way, let me take this opportunity to introduce James. I was like, hang on a sec, no, this poor chap is being buried, right? But anyway, okay, fine. So I sort of stood there looking, a bit awkward probably. And he said, it's great to see this newcomer in the village coming to a village funeral, right? There are people in this village who have lived here all their lives and they're not here
They're not
today,
here.
right? It's really important. And he said, you ladies, and he was sort of looking around the 300 or so people around the grave, and he was saying, before you get any ideas, two things. One, he's married, and two, he's older than the guy we just buried. Okay, thank you very much. Right, that's a nice welcome. But
And
No, village life is something else.
yeah, and have they given you a name?
Yes. So I've kind of acquired in the village book and everything. It's written as Kampamba,
Hence the
hence the house and all this.
house.
Yeah.
So yeah, so whatever. So it's what Kampamba, and you're always waving at the kids and stuff.
Right. And if there's a collection or whatever, and they write in the book, then it's written
So
as.
in the book is registered as Kampamba.
Yes.
Okay. No, welcome, Kampamba. Welcome again to Zambia. 2 years late. We're welcoming you 2 years late, but welcome.
Thank you.
And if you've visited Europe, have you visited Europe since moving? And did you experience reverse culture shock?
Yes, I have. I mean, I go back because I still have family, and my mother, who's sort of getting on a bit these days. So it's nice to go back and see her and catch up with things. I think what I find actually is, and I think this reflects well on Zambia, is the first day or two is wonderful, right? It's like, oh gosh, I remember, and you feel everything feels familiar. But after a couple of days, literally a couple of days, it starts to feel quite claustrophobic. Everything is so predictable, everything's so obvious, everything's so easy, right? And it's like, I miss the free-flowing, the kind of like easiness of Zambia sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, no. I guess we're good people, I guess, I suppose.
Very, very.
Okay, James, or should I say Kampamba, we have come to the end of our interview, and thank you so much for making it. However, we will allow you to say bye to our audience in Nyanja or Bemba.
Oh, you can't do that.
You have to. So that's your camera there.
Thank you very much, and bye-bye.
I'm
I'm not going to embarrass myself, right?
no,
Because I will shame myself and my wife.
There's no shame.
And my mother-in-law will be furious when I pronounce things incorrectly in
Okay,
Bemba.
because you've mentioned mother-in-law, we'll forgive you. Only because you've mentioned mother-in-law. So, no, to our audience, thank you so much for being part of the show. Please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And we will see you next time. From all of us at Money and People Podcast, it's bye.
Bye-bye.